Alright guys, what's up? Today we're talking about the IXSR here. Now, I want to mention that, my perspective of this comes from using an M17, which is my previous video, and I've used a Futaba 7PXR as well. I do use this for the purposes of racing, in this case 8th scale racing, and practicing with my Mini B on a track orientated setting. Though this transmitter here could be used for various purposes, such as crawling, on-road racing, bashing. That's what it's advertised as, but it is also advertised as a race radio, and many consider it to be very orientated towards racing. It's got all the special settings you would want. There's some special settings for drag racing as well, which includes the launches. Very cool feature. I've never tried it because I don't have a drag setup, but I do want to mention my perspective on this. Very good radio, no problems with it. Receivers are only $60. They're not a couple $100, right? Since if I had a vehicle, I don't want to pay $130 something per receiver. I'd rather pay $60 in my opinion. And they don't use a bind plug, right? So you just press the button and it starts binding for you. I love that system. Anyways, so this is pretty much like a tablet. I'm not going to cover too much setting into it. I'm just going to cover what I liked, because there's a lot of videos out there, and the videos I saw all shared the same thing. They shared the features, and the features, and there wasn't very much opinion of actual use and time with it. So I wanted to be unique and maybe just give my feedback on this. So what I found myself using the most here, I'm gonna share what my setup looked like for the racing aspect, and just to help you guys out and whatnot. So you could set your endpoints here, and then obviously you want to set your sub trim before you set the trims over here on the dials. You get that sub trim. It's kind of a rule of thumb to do there. Let's see, you could reverse your stuff there. I am using exponential. Now you might be like, why is it +10 and not -10 as traditionally seen as in other radios? But as you could see, when you move this way, the curve is actually proper now, and when we move this way, the curve is kind of how you want it to be, but I notice it's the opposite way around there, +10. You got your steering speed, which I do mess with that, 95, steering rate, 100%. Yeah, that's pretty much all we've messed with there. I feel it's very important to do your exponentials, because it'll allow you to keep that rear end locked in through mid corner. It just feels more comfortable on the 8 scale side, at least, right? Now throttle, I kind of just keep my stuff at 100% for throttle, because I'm running a 1900 kV, so it's not like I got heavy power. Some guys run 2200s, then you start to dial it down, but I've had a 1900, so we keep that at 100%, right? Now your reverse is considered your brake as well, at least that's how I've seen it to be. So when I adjust it to 90%, I don't want all my brake being enforced, because it's just going to lock. You don't want it to lock. You want to maintain that corner speed. I haven't really messed with my throttle curve, though I probably should. We'll play around with that next time. Throttle rate, I haven't messed with that too much neither. The reverse rate, I do, because we already had that 90% up there. This 90% reverse rate is kind of gonna numb it down a little more, so it's just gonna provide a numb feel. That's the way I could describe it. Like, it's not gonna be aggressively that 90%, it's gonna be even more numb, and I kind of like it that way, or at least that's what I would play with on my M17. I kind of like doing that stuff there. This is a special one here, traction control. I'm kind of liking it. Now, it might develop bad habits because I had this on my M17 as well. It wasn't traction control, but it was the dual rate on the throttle side, because it allowed you to have dual rate on the throttle and brake, both individually, right? So when you would do it on the throttle side, it felt like you had kind of like a traction control feeling, and the Futaba had the same thing as well. But when you turn it off, your car is going to drive different. So you really have to get used to the driving styles if you turn it on. I felt it did actually help because I put some ball tires on there. I went out there and the car felt good. But when it gets challenging to use traction control is when the track develops a lot of character or bumps of that matter. You might find your car getting upset in the wrong situation. So you got to know when to have it on and when to have it off, because it's not always going to be useful. You have to, it's a tool, but you got to know when to use that tool. And obviously you could adjust these there. And that's kind of what I ended up on. I'm still not too sure what the ramp rate does, but I did play with it and I liked it at 45. Let's see what else. ABS. So this is so ABS, there's two ways to approach this. I turned it on, but in Conquer, my brake settings up there, my endpoints, and the reverse rate, as we called it, they're higher because this system here does not allow my brakes to lock. But if I wasn't using ABS, then my reverse endpoints, we would lower them dramatically. That way they could be even more numb. But in this case, we have them higher because we're using ABS. So pretty much when braking, you could kind of hear it. It's quite obvious. You hear your car like not being able to lock. So as soon as you hit the brakes, your brakes are doing this. And you could adjust those speeds here and the engagement and pulse, right? So it's quite interesting there. I have played with my settings here, and this is kind of what I ended up on according to my last practice day, and it's what I used when I went out of town. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen, but you look at David Ongaro with his stick radio, and when he's braking, you could see his thumbs kind of like, they're going really fast on that brake, up and down, up and down. Now I want to show you guys something here to kind of check this out. So this is the throttle, right? But as soon as you hit this is what the brake's doing there. And I've got it set up. Now it could be like, initially you don't have it. Initially you don't have it. This is me right here. But as soon as you hit that like 30 something mark, it activates. It really does. And that's kind of another tool there to process and figure out if you want to use it, because there's two ways to approach this here, with the endpoints being lower or using the ABS system. Now I've only had about a couple of hours with the actual transmitter, but this is what I've liked so far. It has allowed me to like push my car a little harder into the corners with more comfort, right? But I'm sure there's a time and place for this. I just haven't figured it out. So for now, it's on because I've enjoyed it. And that's pretty much it. It's pretty much all I've got here. It's pretty much all I've used. It's very easy. What I like about it, it's very easy to set up my stuff. Okay, it's hard to the perspective when I'm looking through the camera here. But your timers, it's very easy to set up, as you guys have seen the videos. But when I had my Sanwa, I struggled to put my timing system in there. I had to watch a YouTube video and whatnot. But here you just kind of, it's a cell phone pretty much. You just kind of go in there and navigate it yourself. Just kind of click that, it starts. Or you could click the button right here. It comes factory from stock. And it'll stop using it. Or it'll keep going. So far I've enjoyed it. I have noticed though that when the battery life gets close to finishing, or when you're at 18%, 15% on battery life, the control or the transmitter gets very conservative. It'll turn off the screen and you pretty much can't go in and use the settings. I guess it's trying to, like if you're racing and it starts dying on you, it gets very conservative. It's trying to save that battery for you. but at the same time, you kind of have to like make sure your transmitter's up with charge, because you do want to be able to make those changes when they're needed and stuff. So that's one thing to consider. I've been using the wireless charging thing, so you just kind of like connect the adapter there and it starts charging, right? Works very nice. Something else I've noticed that pretty much nobody has talked about, it does use USB-C, right? But if you use a USB-C to another USB-C and you put it in there, it will not charge. I'm not sure the science behind this, or maybe it's to protect the battery, because obviously USB-C to USB-C is going to charge way faster than the average USB to USB-C. So yeah, it only charges with USB to USB-C, if that makes sense. That slower rate of charging, from what I assume and from what I understand, I guess it's to protect that radio and the battery, right? But that's just something to consider. You don't have to use this one forever, but you can get that other option that I mentioned shortly, or that I mentioned before. But yeah, I will continue to use this radio and have some fun with it. I am using I don't know if I mentioned this, but the 515 receivers. It allows me to run 5.5 milliseconds. I think that's what it's called, but for sure it's 5.5. Don't quote me on that. But they've got throttle steering, and then I can run my transponder and my fan for my truggy, which essentially I do use as well. But yeah, very nice, guys. Battery lasts forever. I think last battery capacity that I was allowed to use was about a week's worth. So it was good stuff there. 2 full days in which I probably used my remote 3 hours each day, and then I went to Badlands. Yeah, it's very nice, guys. So any questions, just drop down in the comments, and I've had some racing experience with this, so yeah, leave them down, any questions you guys have, or visit my Facebook, Edgar Ortiz, and shoot me a message through there, and I can get back to you guys to help any of you guys out there with what you guys may need and anything. So yeah, thanks, guys.